Hey everybody, thanks for jumping on this afternoon. This is Kevin with DealerFire. We're just going to get started here in about 45 seconds, just as we get to the top of the hour. So just sit tight. There's a few people that are still popping in. I'm sure people are coming off of lunch as well. So we'll give them a little while to get settled in. And just as a reminder, this will be recorded. If you're familiar with GoToWebinar, you can ask questions at any time. Just use the question panel, which is on the bottom part of your GoToWebinar module, which is on your screen. So we'll get started here in just a second, and I will be right back with you. Thanks. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It's about 2 minutes after the hour. So again, this is Kevin Robinson. I am the product manager for DealerFire websites and digital marketing. I also have a couple people with me that are going to be joining on the webinar. Tyson Smith, who is a product owner, as well as Julie from our marketing team. They'll be helping me with any questions as we go along here. And just as a little reminder, if you haven't used GoToWebinar before, during this session, everybody will be muted, and that's just to make sure that we don't have too much chaos going on. But if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to ask those in the questions module, which is on the bottom part of the GoToWebinar widget that's currently on your screen. Just as a reminder, we have about 30 minutes budgeted for today's session. I don't think it's going to take much longer than that, depending on how many questions there are. So we'll try and finish up a little bit early. We'll package all of this together, the recording of the session as well as the deck that I'm going to use just briefly here in an email that will actually go out to everyone tomorrow. And that way, if you had anybody from your dealership or that you work with that wanted to review the session but just didn't get the time to actually jump on our live session today, you can go ahead and send that out to them. So let's go ahead and get started. The recording is in progress. So any questions that you have from here on out, I'll try and reference those as I go along. We also have Tyson on the call who will be able to type in answers as we go through. So just something to keep in mind there. So a quick agenda on what we're going to be covering today. Let me just jump forward one slide here. So really 4 things that we're going to go through. Number 1, first of all, how do we access lead forms within Engine 6? So once we go into Ignite, go to our website, where do we actually go to find those lead forms? Then how do we work with lead form library? Let's say that we want to add customized field to the form, or we want to select a form as required, or change the help text in a field. All those different flexibility rules, options, and criteria that we could have with forms, how do we manage those? Also, how do we update our lead routes on our form? So if we have a form that we've built specifically, let's say for a parts order, and we want to make sure that that form only goes to our parts manager, how do we update those lead routes to make sure that it either goes to our CRM or just a plain text route to somebody that's an actual individual at our dealership? And then lastly, I just have a few form optimization tips. We could honestly have an entire session about conversion rate optimization and different signals that are used in order to make sure that forms are converting at their highest point. But I just want to give you about 5 different tips that you can abide by or use when you're creating custom landing pages. or when you're working on any sort of overlay forms, maybe it's an e-price type form or a vehicle lead generation type form. So just some things that we can give you as a takeaway as you start building content on your website. These are the exact same tips that our content development team uses as well. So we'll make sure that you have plenty of next steps to leave our session with. So you notice one slide that I went by that I wanted to call attention to as well. Most of you have been registering for these sessions, which has been great. But just as a quick follow-up, we're going to try and have 2 sessions every single month. The first one will be just a general intro to Engine 6, and that'll be essentially the same content each and every month. How to access Builder, how to create a page, how to work with modules, how to work with multi-device preview. And then we'll have a specialty session each month as well. Obviously today we're talking about lead forms, and then next month, a little bit later in the month, we're going to be talking specifically about website SEO. So how do I update my meta information on my website? How do I optimize URLs? Things like that. So if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like us to cover, feel free to send those along to us. You can either drop them in the questions module here within GoToWebinar, or you can email us as well at e6@dealersocket.com, and I'll have that email address listed here towards the end of the session. So feel free to register for these classes, send it to anybody you want to. We are as transparent as possible in this process. We want to make sure that you're getting all the information and knowledge that you need in order to have a good experience building your website. So just going back to the agenda here, first we're going to talk about Lead Form Builder. We're going to talk about all the different components that surround it. And to do this, I'm going to use one of our sandbox websites, and you can access this from where you are as well. Just called engine6.io. And as you can see here, we have a customized lead form that's been added to the homepage of this website just for general lead generation, essentially, for people that want to get in touch. And you'll notice there's some things about this lead form that I'm going to reference a little bit later in terms of form optimization, relevant calls to action, information about what the customer is actually going to get when they actually submit this form. The reduction of form fields, all these different things that play into form optimization and how we can make sure that we're getting maximum conversion. So I'll jump back into Ignite, and I'm actually going to take one giant step back here because I feel it's important for us to make sure that we understand exactly where we're accessing this. So if you start out in Ignite, you log in as normal. In order to access Engine 6 or your page builder, the first thing that you're going to do is go down to the bottom left where you see Engine 6. So if you're logged into Ignite, bottom left, Engine 6, and that's actually going to bring up your website builder, just like you currently see on your screen here. So for these purposes, I'm just going to use a page template that has been pre-created. As you can see here, we just have some dummy text. We have some images that we could potentially slop out. But I'm essentially just going to use this for our form presentation today to make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as where to access and what to use your forms for specifically. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to insert a form onto this page. And to do that, the first thing that I need to do is go up to my primary navigation up on top here where we have our page creation, our modules, and our system modules. And I'm first just going to click on modules. And this will bring up all the 75 or so different modules that we currently have within the system. We release 1 or 2 modules every 2 weeks. And we try to let you know when those enhancements come out. So then I'm going to go to my form category, or what we like to call a bucket. And this is actually going to be where all of the pre-created forms currently exist. We have about 25 of these form templates, as we call them. And this will essentially be your underlying architecture for every form that you have on this page. So as you can see here, there's a variety of forms, everything from contact us to get e-price to an employment application. There's a finance application, a test drive application. Basically anything that you would want from an automotive standpoint on your website currently exists. Now, the nice thing about this is that as soon as you add one of these forms to the pages, you can customize it however you want to. And this is essentially where that form building capability comes into play. So for these purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and use the general contact us / ask a question form. And similar to any other module that you find in Engine 6, you're just going to go ahead and drag and drop this onto the page using the guidelines within the website builder. So as you can see here, I hover onto the page, my blue lines show up potentially where I can drop this form. So I'm just going to drop it underneath my primary content article up here on top. So here is our ask a question form. Again, this can be completely customized, and we would actually invite you to customize it because we want to make sure that this form has your value proposition added to it. So whether that's a sentence or some piece of text essentially that explains what can the user get out of this form as you are adding it to the page, what is important to them in order to actually submit their personal info. In this case, we have first name, last name, email, phone, comments. We also have just a general checkbox component for how would you like us to contact you. So pretty standard out of the box here. It's probably a little bit longer than we would necessarily want, but we'll just show you some of the form features before we get into the actual optimization components. So first and foremost, if you want to edit the form itself, all you have to do is double click into it, or you can click on the edit form button here up on the top right. And you'll notice that's going to gray out the background and it's going to bring our form or our primary editing area to the forefront. And from here, once I do that, you'll notice that I have the ability to add fields. I can go into my form settings. I can discard any changes that were made. And then once we make some changes, I'll show you what apply and exit looks like, because what's nice about this is every form that I edit, either I can save it as a brand new template, or I can just overwrite any existing components of that form that already exist in the system. So some pretty cool features that we have. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and just work with our existing form fields before we get into the form library. So for instance, if I go to the first name field here and I click on it, there's a couple things I can do. Either I can double click on that form field, or I can click on the little pencil icon here, which is going to bring up my form settings. So those bring up my label. So in this case, maybe I don't want it to be completely first name. I just want it to be first because I'm trying to make my form a little bit shorter, a little bit easier to read. So you'll notice any change that I make within the field settings will be reflected automatically within the form itself. So all these changes are done in real time. I can also set my requirement for this field. So obviously for most web services, also for most CRMs, we're going to have to require a first name, a last name, an email address, and in some cases, a phone number. So you can actually toggle back and forth here between required and unrequired. And as you do that, you'll see that the little asterisk here with the requirement for first is updated or removed in that case. And we do have some help text here next to the form settings to make sure that we can guide you through this as well. You don't need to worry about PII info. This is going to be more related to finance applications, which I can talk about a little bit later. And then we also have field size. So do you want this to be a large field? Do you want it to be a mini field? Keep in mind that as you go through different device sizes, this will change. So just make sure that you have as uniform as possible fields and field sizing across all of your forms. If there was a number, I could actually enter a range in here if there was something I wanted to select from, and I can enter field help in this case as well. So as you can see from the help text here, we say an optional property which displays text when a user is filling out a particular field. Think of this as your help text that actually displays in the field itself. So those are your field settings. And again, I can click into any number of these fields and essentially get the exact same experience. Do I want it to be required? What do I want to name this field? And that'll automatically show within the field itself. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the field library. So right now we have first, let's just go ahead and remove name out of here as well, just because we want to make it as uniform as possible. So we have first, last, we have email address, we have phone number, and we have comments. I should also mention that you can edit your form title at any point just by double clicking on the title itself. So if this is ask a question and I just want this to be get information, I can go ahead and update that. I can also select left, center, right, or just completely hide the label itself. So a lot of different variation that I can do there with the title. Once I go into my field library, that's going to be on the top left-hand side here for add fields. And this is going to be similar to any other module configuration that you have within Engine 6. These are all pre-created, but you can actually create your own customized field as well. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. Any fields that already exist within the form are actually going to be grayed out within the field library. So as you can tell here with first name, last name, email, phone number, etc., I can't even click on these. I can't add them to the form field simply because they're actually already being used. We have these split into different categories: personal info, address, vehicle info. So let's say you're building some sort of test drive form and you want a vehicle of interest to be added. Other, which would be any of your customized field sets, like you can see here with a checkbox list, like call, text, and email for how would you like us to contact you. You can also add hidden fields if you want to. These are not necessarily fields that will be customer facing, but maybe you have a web service or a lead web service type requirement that actually requires you to have some sort of information included in the XML or the ADF of the lead form. In that case, it'll still be added into the email route or the send of the email. It just won't be consumer facing in this case. So a few different options that you have. So to show you how this actually works, all we need to do is drag and drop these fields on the form wherever we want them to actually display. So in this case, I'm going to use zip code because sometimes we need to know what's the postal code of the person that's actually reaching out to us, whether it's a group site or a portal site of some sort. Sometimes it's good information to know the actual location of that customer. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag and drop my zip code. And similarly to all the other module configurations and guidelines settings within E6, the guidelines work the exact same way within Form Builder. So as you can see here, I can actually just drag and drop the zip code field anywhere that I want to within the form. So I'm just going to add it underneath phone number, but this looks kind of weird because obviously a zip code is only going to be about 5 digits, whether it's US or Canada, and I don't want it to necessarily be on its own line. So what I can do is I can actually take this and split a line with another field like you can see here with phone number. There's my guideline that shows on the right-hand side. So if I do that, I've actually split the column width itself so that I only have phone number and zip code on a single line as opposed to 2 full width lines. It just looks a lot better. The form is a lot more compact in this case. And one could potentially even say the same thing if I wanted to add something like a customized field to split the difference with email address. Maybe I wanted to actually just do one field for full name, which is something that can certainly be done as well, and then split that with email address. The idea here is the least amount of form fields you can possibly have, the better. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you are specifically working in an OEM program or you're working with some sort of lead web service that delivers leads to your CRM, in some cases, they actually require the first name and the last name to be completely separate. So just something to keep in mind. We won't get into your exact instances today, but if you have questions on it, you can definitely ask either your CSM or your website account manager. So the same settings apply to these field forms once I actually drag them out of the field library. So for instance, zip code here, if I double click on it, I have the exact same options here. Do I want to make it required? Do I want this to be a certain size? Do I want to add some sort of field help? So the exact same options there. If I go down to the bottom here, let's say that I want to add in some sort of customized field, because right now I have first name, last name, email, phone, and zip. I do have a comments field, which isn't necessarily as descriptive. Maybe I actually want the customer to tell me, or I want to tell them the type of information that I actually want them to place here, whether it's a vehicle that they're interested in or a specific service or part maybe that they're interested in, depending on what page I'm currently on. So what I can do in that case is just take something like a single line text and add that to the form. Same thing in this case. Maybe I just want to say vehicle of interest, and potentially I can make this required or not. But the idea here is that this allows me to create as many customized form fields as I potentially want to within the form that I'm actually editing. So I can do that not only with the single line text like vehicle of interest here, but I can also do it with paragraph text. So just like the comments field that you saw previously, double click into that, change my field label or my field information, and the exact same logic applies in that case. If at any time you actually want to delete a form field, all you have to do is click on the trash can icon. So for any one of these, as I hover over it or as I click into it, like vehicle of interest here, if you click on the trash can, it'll just go ahead and delete that right off of your form. I'm going to go back to your field forms. So a couple other things that I'll mention. Number one is you can add these specialty sections as well. So like you can see here with our call, email, and text, this would be part of our checkbox list, which can be customizable. You can also just do a single checkbox. So this would be a good example for something like, I would like the dealership to text me, or I'm fine with the dealership calling me. Whatever sort of opt-in type information, or I agree to the dealership's communication preferences. Whatever opt-in or agreement type information that you want to do, I would recommend using the checkbox. It's probably the most underutilized component that we have within Form Builder, or that you really see with any form builder. But it really helps out just making sure that everybody's on the same page when they actually submit information to the dealership. So this is primarily the customer-facing version of Form Builder, or at least what you will be able to access within Engine 6. A couple other things that I'll show you in terms of working with Form Builder itself. First and foremost is the settings. So click on settings. We're going to have the same configuration panel showing up here. And in the last configuration panel, if primarily we were working with adding and editing fields, now we're actually working with what happens to this form once somebody actually submits it. So is it going to an individual? Is it going to a CRM? Where is this actually going? So as you can see here, we have all of our form information and our form type. So this is just a general contact us form, which is the form category in this case. We can also change the form title. So if you want this to be delivered to you in an email or through your CRM as something very specific, you can certainly set that up. So maybe you are a franchise Toyota dealer and you want to take pre-orders on the 2019 Toyota Camry. You could potentially just change this form title to 29 Toyota Camry pre-order. You can also set up your default success screen, or what I prefer is actually a customized page. So if the customer submits this form, they'll actually be redirected to a success page that says, thank you for your submission. Somebody will be back to you, in 2 hours or 24 hours or whatever your dealership specific process and requirement is. And all you need to do in that case is, just like Engine 6 building a page, just build a custom page, a page form success page, and then you can just link it here from your custom success page dropdown. So we'll just jump back into our default success screen. Success screen, content and text. This is completely customizable as well. This is what the customer will see once they submit that form. And then the same thing for the form subject itself. Now, where this really comes into play, the form settings, is where you're actually routing this form. So as you can see right now, this form goes to e6@dealersocket.com. If I want to edit this form and where it actually goes to, all I need to do is click on the Add New link. And this will allow me to either send this to a plain text email or to a CRM address. There's probably varying degrees online right now as far as the usage of CRM, whether you're a franchise or independent dealer. But essentially the way this goes is, if you want this to go to your Gmail address or your Outlook address, all you're going to do is use the plain text option. If you want this to go to your CRM, you're going to use the ADF XML email version. So this, if you're a dealer socket customer, for instance, would essentially be something like web leads at whatever your dealership's specific name is. So that'll actually be sent over XML so that your CRM can ingest it and then essentially assign it as a sales opportunity. So you have both options in this case. You can either set it up as an ADF email, or you can set it up as a plain text email, or both. So as you can see from right now, we actually have an ADF email for our web leads as well as a plain text email for E6. So this would be the case in maybe a salesperson or a parts manager, to just keep using that analogy, maybe wants to be CC'd on all lead forms that come from this particular form or this particular page. So when that happens, you can set it up to just essentially be a CC or additional delivery. Now, you might think there's a lot of different forms that could potentially be on the website. How do I find forms that I've edited already? How do I find forms that currently exist on other pages? So we actually built out this info tab on the form settings as well. And essentially what this is it'll show me every single page of the website in which this exact version of the form currently exists. So my get information form, or previously it was called contact us, exists currently on my home to page, the separate home page that I built out. Vehicle details, so my VDP, contact us pop-up, meet the team, a test form, or a test page, I should say, and then just another test page or a sandbox page here. So what's great about this is you don't have to worry as you're creating these forms, 6-9 months from now, whether you or somebody else as a dealership says, we had that one form or that one page that was converting extremely well. What did that form look like? Well, it's nice in this case, you can see exactly the iterations of that form, or that exact form's requirements and that form's criteria throughout the website on all of these different pages. So you just click into it. But this is for maximum accountability, essentially, across all the different pages of your website, whether you have 70 pages or 700 pages, doesn't matter. So that is your form configuration, which you set up all essentially the underlying architecture of your form, routing, where do I want this form to go to, and then where does this form currently exist. Last two things that I'll show you before we wrap up here. The first is your call to action. So very similarly to all my form fields, if I double click into the call to action or the button, in this case, I can simply enough just edit this. So if I wanted to say something like go, for instance, also where do I want that button to actually be placed, left, center, right. So that'll update my call to action. And then lastly, when I click on apply and exit, so let me just go back to that. I did that kind of quick. When I go back to apply and exit on the top right side here, you're going to have two options. The first being, do you want to update the existing template with these changes? So that contact us CLP form that I dragged and dropped, do I want that to be overwritten with the changes that I just made there? If so, select that, apply, it'll be overwritten, and you're done. The second option is, do you want to save this as a new template? So maybe this is a form that you created specifically for that parts order type page. If that's the case, all you have to do is rename this form. We'll just call it parts order. And let's see, let's name it something else because somebody already named it that. And that's actually a good point that I should bring up. If you already have a form that's named this, you won't be able to actually save it. So as you can see here, it just turns red. Form title should be unique, so we'll just say parts order 1. And then once we click on apply, this will create a brand new form within your form gallery so that you can access it at any time, drag it on any page that you want to as well. So that is all of your form changes, as well as updating the existing template and saving as a new template. If you've made a bunch of changes in the form, but you're just not ready to save it yet, or you don't necessarily think this is the right way to go yet, you can just click on the discard changes here up on the top right as well. That will actually abandon all changes that you currently made for the form itself, just like that. Now, before we get into our form optimization tips, the one thing that I would definitely recommend is, as you're building the form, make sure to use your multi-device preview mode to make sure that form looks good across all of your different devices. So if I were to go to tablet, for instance, I want to make sure that that form looks really good. Same thing for portrait or landscape mode, which it does. And we haven't necessarily gone through this yet. This is going to be an advanced session for container settings. But if for some reason your form is too mashed up against the sides, maybe it's full width, you can actually use your container settings to set your padding on the left and the right so that your form isn't completely end-to-end. So kind of a cool optimization that you can make. So once your form's ready to go, definitely use multi-device preview mode just to make sure that everything renders properly for the consumer, for the shopper, for the user, before you're actually publishing that page live, which you can just do up on the top right here. Save will actually save all of your changes in the system. Publish will make all these changes live to anybody that's actually accessing your website. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here just for a second and see if there were any questions that came through before we jump into our form optimization tips. Okay, almost done here. Okay, so let me go ahead and navigate back to our deck here. So form building tips, I want to give you 5 specific items that you can actually take back with you in terms of form optimization and making sure that you're getting the best conversion rate. So first and foremost, it's really important, and this is actually something that we offer as a completely free service. If you don't have this on your website currently, you can definitely reach out to us and we'll get it added with no problem whatsoever. But that's HTTPS, so essentially an SSL certificate. doesn't necessarily play directly into form optimization, but I can tell you that there have been many studies that consumers actually feel more secure or feel as if the website is more trustworthy by having some sort of consumer-facing security signal. And HTTPS is the exact definition of that. So it's a great optimization tactic for your website, not only for just customer trustworthiness, but also SEO signals as well. But not only that, add your privacy policy to your form. So essentially, what can customers potentially expect from you if they submit their information? Are you going to have some sort of sentence or some sort of legal information that essentially says we will not spam you with any type of information? Just essentially setting the scene, or at least setting expectations for them to make sure that they understand exactly what they're getting from this. The second plays right into that last point that I made about multi-device preview. Most of you are probably aware of this term referred to as the fold. Well, the fold kind of disappeared about 4 or 5 years ago when responsive websites kind of came into the fray. And that's essentially because what is a fold anymore if you're going from 1500 pixels to 320 pixels on handheld devices? That being said, there's actually still a strategy in place for where your form should be positioned, and that's essentially as high up on the page as you possibly can go. So if you're providing some sort of value proposition within your header or within the imagery or video of your page, how can you make sure that people can get a hold of you as fast as possible? Now, that might not necessarily be just with a form. That's also with your directions, with your phone numbers, your click-to-call information as well. But place that form as high as you possibly can on the site without impeding the user's ability to get the information that they want. So if you're writing a blog post, if you have some sort of custom landing page that you want to make sure that you have as well, just make sure that that form isn't impeding their progress, but it's there if they need it. Thirdly, reduce friction with less fields. So what does that mean specifically? I've talked a little bit about white space and why it's so important, especially for form fields. But there's actually kind of an interesting study that was done. I'm not sure if anybody knows Neil Patel, but essentially there was a study that was done that by reducing a form by one field, conversion rate was actually be able to be increased by 26%. So that speaks to a lot in terms of why less is more, especially for the consumer. And in most cases, the number one field that's actually required is email address. I'm sure most of you know this, but like I said, in some OEM instances, especially if you're franchise dealership, first name, last name, and phone number are required as well. So in some cases, we just have requirements for compliance that don't necessarily allow us to get too simple with that, and that's completely fine. But we want to make sure that we have as least amount of form fields to get the most amount of information possible, because these people understand that we're going to be reaching out to them. And there's a brand new enhancement that we're going to be releasing next month, which I'm super excited about, called Multi-Step Form Builder. That'll essentially be a new tool that you can use similarly to what I just went through, where you can break long forms into multiple steps. So step 1, first name, last name, email, phone number. Step 2, address information. Step 3, vehicle of interest. So like a schedule test drive form, for instance, isn't going to take the customer, 15 minutes or 20 minutes. They can just cruise through the different steps and break up that monotony a little bit. So we'll have more information coming out about that in the next few weeks through our website account management team. But reduce that friction. Make sure that you have the least amount of fields possible to get the most information possible. Also, strong calls to action. How can we make sure that that send button isn't too superfluous? So how do we make sure that we are getting people to convert to the next step? And essentially what that means is keep it short and simple. People, when they fill out the form, they know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to submit that form. So you don't have to add a lot of text. You don't have to add a lot of characters. FormStack, which is a company that we follow pretty closely that works on conversion rate optimization, they found that essentially the top 10 converting buttons contain 2 words or less. So you should never have to go to 3, 4, 5 different words in order to get somebody to actually press that button or submit that form. Keep it as short as possible. And then lastly, relevant landing page copy. So if you're going to have a form on the page, make sure that that form corresponds directly to whatever information you're actually putting on the page itself. We do a lot of content development at DealerFire, everything from models to comparisons to fixed ops to promos and events. So when you're putting that form on the page, don't let it be just your completely generic contact us type form, because it adds absolutely no enhanced value to the customer or the consumer. We should make sure that that landing page copy is as relevant as possible to the form itself. So I'll give the example that I just made a while back with the 2019 Toyota Camry. If I have a page that's related to the Toyota Camry, that form should probably have something related to the Camry as well, whether it's that pre-order type form that I was talking about before, get more images or get video of that Toyota Camry. We have to offer something of value in order for the customer to actually submit their information to us. It's a really two-way type process. It's two-way communication, not only what we're giving, but also what the consumer is giving. So just think about that as you go through the pages on your website and really understand exactly what you're trying to convey, what you're trying to write about, again, whether it be custom landing pages or blogs, and then ultimately what you're trying to give that customer in order to submit their information to you. It'll really go a long way if you just take a look at how many contact us type forms are currently on your website and how they could be optimized. So that is the 5 specific tips that we have for making sure that your forms are running as smoothly as possible. Again, we could do another hour session on form optimization, which we won't get into today. Maybe we can set something up for a little bit later this year. But those are just 5 tips that you can actually take forward with you today. So I believe that Tyson has been answering most of the questions in the questions box. Let me just double check here and see if there were any other ones that had come out. Okay, looks like those are pretty solid so far. So I'm just going to take a break here for 1 second and talk about how to contact the DealerFire product team. If there's any other questions that come through in the meantime, go ahead and drop those into the questions box, and we'll continue to answer those as we go along here. But thank you, Tyson, for kind of taking that under your wing. So Q&A, let's just spend the last couple minutes going over those. They were answered to all, so I want to make sure that everyone knows exactly what was posed here. And we'll send a follow-up email as well that has those questions and answers as well. Looks like primarily these are inventory, a couple form questions here as well. So here's a good one that I want to make sure that I bring up. I like the text to yourself link on E6, but would you consider that a legit lead? The information about the customer's name, phone, email, and vehicle get pushed to Ignite under leads, but does not get pushed to the CRM. Can we get that contact information off of that information, or can we get the customer contact off of that information? For those of you that aren't aware, on E6, on the vehicle description page, we actually have a field that essentially says text to yourself, and it just sends a VDP link through to the customer's phone. They can click on it and be taken directly to the website. So no, this is not actually considered a lead simply because it's only an email address. It's actually considered more of a subscription service, and it's used primarily more in email type targeting as opposed to actual lead generation. It's just a widget that's primarily used for mobile optimization on the website. So I want people to access my vehicle on the go or my website on the go. This is a nice widget that I can actually send that information to myself moving through devices throughout the day. So it does not actually comply with normal ADF standards, but that's completely fine. If you go into Ignite, you can actually get a download of all that list, and you can still upload that to your custom business rules within CRM, or just using it in your advertising there as well. So definitely not something that is necessarily a legit lead or a lead by definition, but certainly something that you can still use actually for targeting, whether it be email-based, social-based, AdWords-based, doesn't matter. You still have access to the email in that case. Let's see if there was anything else. Okay, that was pretty much it outside of the ones that were actually answered already. So just one thing that I wanted to bring up, you can see the phone number on the page. You can also see the email address. If you have any questions on any of the content or have any suggestions for further subjects that we can use for our training sessions, you can go ahead and use e6 at dealersocket.com. That actually comes directly to the DealerFire product team, and we answer extremely fast. So if you have any suggestions for enhancements, if you have any feedback for us whatsoever, we love to get that. That's exactly what our job is about. That's what Tyson does on a daily basis. So feel free to use that email address whenever you can. I'm going to jump back to the next training webinar. So on 11/6, November 6th, we're going to have another Intro to Engine 6 class that'll cover essentially the same information that we covered on the first Intro to E6 class. But if anyone has any suggestions on things that we could potentially add to that to really enhance that experience for new E6 customers or people that are just trying to get kind of a refresh tutorial, we would absolutely love it. So use that email address that I had given you previously. We'll make sure to include everything that we possibly can just to make sure that we're giving you the best possible information that we can. So with that, I don't see any other questions come through. So we're going to go ahead and end the session for today. I will stay on for another few minutes just in case anyone has any other questions that they want to drop into the box. But in the meantime, you have our email address. You can get a hold of us from phone as well, or you can reach out to your website account manager. They would be happy to take your phone call as well, and we can just take it from there. So I hope everyone got some good information from our lead form builder session. We'll have more information on that multi-step form builder coming out here, like I said, in the next probably 2 weeks or so. I'd probably expect November 1st in that case. And maybe we can send out an enhancement video or something like that to make sure that you have full access to that tool and potentially how to use it. So I just wanted to say thanks for everyone for jumping on today. Again, feel free to contact us with any question, comment, or concern that you potentially have, and we'll make sure to get right back to you. So on behalf of Tyson, myself, and Julie on the marketing team, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your week.